So this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel, broadcasting under the banner of Baby Angel Geronimo editions. This is part A being broadcast timed at 13:15 GMT. We are late by 3 minutes, I think, but this is the first part of the day's bulletin, and we are starting with the continuation of the look at the corrupt judiciary and legal so-called system in the United Kingdom. The Times, of course, on the print and also most of the day until the announcement of Raab's resignation was leading with this piece. Raab stands firm as Prime Minister Mul's report on bullying. Now, why the Times ran that story and the three bylines, well, the bylines among three of the writers, so-called political editor, policy editor, and home affairs editor, left out the legal affairs editor or legal editor, Jonathan Amis. Why did the Times run this story for as long as it did? Raab stands firm as PM Mul's report on bullying. Now, obviously, very clear to any intelligent person, the fact that Sunak had received the report and he was mulling the report on bullying was, in other words, an admission that the thug, Dominic Raab, was a bully, was found to have been a bully. Now, the Guardian is now running this story with the heading aggressive. The word aggressive is what they are using. I mean, aggressive. What's the difference between aggressive and bully? That is an admission. And the Guardian, let's check what the Guardian is doing. Is it qualifying it? Is the Guardian's heading? It's a live one, which is a follow-up to the resignation thing, which is Oliver Dowden appointed deputy PM. And who is running this live show? It's still Andrew Sparrow. Now, Andrew Sparrow is the one that I think has most frequently on assignment on live broadcasts or live programs. So this is 14 hours GMT item. And let's check on the previous one, headed the aggressive conduct, yeah? So there's quite a few changes. It's a kind of reshuffle caused by the long overdue removal of the thug Dominic Raab. So the fact that this is so clear in the coverage of this Times and the coverage of the Guardian. Now, the Guardian is different from the Times, but the Guardian is not anywhere near truthful or courageous where it should be. Okay. So Alex Chalk is the one that is now in post, and he has a few things on his CV. Especially, they're mentioning in the first entry they published on Wikipedia after the appointment of Alex Chalk as the replacement at the Ministry of so-called Justice. Two cases that he has been involved in. Both are attacks on Sunni Muslims, which is significant. This is something that has not been mentioned before, not that I have noticed. And the fact that they're mentioning this in the wiki entry on Alex Chalk this early shows that there is an agenda there, hinting at anti-Muslim purpose behind the appointment of Alex Chalk. What are they saying? They're literally saying, let's say, he was born in 1976 in Cheltenham. 3 years after I rejected the Lincoln's Inn slot, I could have become licensed law trader as a barrister called to the bar by Lincoln's Inn in 1973. So he was born 3 years after that. Now, his entry about Sunni Muslim is something I'm looking for. I'm going to come to that, locate that. Early life and law career. And they say that Chalk obtained a graduate diploma in law with distinction from the City University, London, and qualified as a barrister from the Inns of Court School of Law. He prosecuted 3 members of the so-called Muslim Patrol who were jailed at the Old Bailey for assault, affray, and public order offences. Now, I'll check on that Muslim Patrol, who they were. I have not come across this particular incident, but I shall check on that one. Chalk also prosecuted a group of radical Sunni Muslims who were jailed for attacking a group of Shiite Muslims. Now, remember, the Shiites Muslims, in terms of the country, the Shiite Muslims are the ones that control the Iranian Republic. And it's interesting that Iran, which is supposed to be treated as an enemy of Israel and therefore an enemy of Britain, is being treated here as preferable to the Sunni Muslims. So that shows the continuation of the crusade, because the Crusaders' target were the Sunni Muslim mainly. Not all of them, but Sunni Muslims were the main targets of the Crusaders. So this is just a starting reference to the Alex Chalk surfacing as replacement of the thug Dominic Raab. Going back to the piece in the Times earlier, which was obviously written yesterday, The officials at the so called Ministry of Justice apparently demanding sacking of Dominic Raab after a terrible verdict. Rishi Sunak was agonizing last night over whether to sack Dominic Raab after deciding that he needed more time to review allegations that his deputy bullied officials. Now, let's put this very firmly again. Rishi Sunak was a creature, politically, created by the likes of Dominic Raab, as Raab claims ownership of the scenario where he, Raab, proposed, introduced Rishi Sunak at the beginning of the contest for leadership. So that is a kind of sophisticated reference, let's say, a subtle reference, not necessarily sophisticated, subtle reference by Dominic Raab to the debt that Rishi Sunak owes to his masters and mistresses. Just as vigorously as Raab played the part of Brexit, so did Boris Johnson, despite the fact that he had two scripts, one for and one against. But he settled on the one against remaining in the European Union. So when in the run up to the actual referendum votes in June 2016, Rishi Sunak appeared to me as a complete novice and a surprise face, as an exponent of the lobby for the Brexit cause. And what impressed, factually, what was unmistakable, let's say, what was noticeable, was that Rishi Sunak came across in his presentation of the argument as a novice, as an amateur. He wasn't a political, if you like, politically mature, all-round individual that had the understanding of what I call society. So he came across as there as a place person. Rishi Sunak was placed there by the Brexiteers for the two purposes. One was the kind of cause that he was going to espouse, and the other one, which is more effective, was the kind of pigmentation. He was an Indian origin born individual. So that actually carried the message that he was a mental slave that was absolutely perfect. There was no argument. There was no argument whatsoever that Rishi Sunak presented on the program that I watched, and I watched the ones that was presented on the BBC Politics slot at the lunchtime with Joe. What's her name? Joe. Whatever her second name is. And there was no challenge. The BBC presenter didn't challenge Rishi Sunak on the kind of utterances that he was making, mechanical utterances. And the fact that he has been forced to go through these various things, including the appointment of the licensed law trading barrister, to create the legitimate appearance of legitimacy in the expression of concern about the thug, Dominic Raab's thuggishness. The fact that there had to be all these after years of other people very familiar with Dominic Raab publicly publicizing the central fact about him, that he was a thug and of course he was a bully, and he couldn't care less about the duty that he owed by holding the office of the state that he did. Now this is going to be repeated. I mean, Suela, Cruella, Evila Fernandez is the one that is behind this heading. Let's look at the Times heading. That is the heading of the Times of Thursday, 20th of April, which is Judges Lose Power to Block Migrant Flights. What the evil Suella Braverman is trying to do is to out fascist the fascists in the Conservative Party. And she doesn't really represent, in terms of numbers, more than 30 fascists in the Conservative Party currently active in terms of identifying themselves, etc., etc. And the Times is the Matt Dutton, who is described as the Home Affairs editor. This subheading is stupid. The main heading is stupid, but this subheading is even more stupid. It says Tory rebels win concessions from Sunak on Rwanda deportation. Now, the first thing is the Sunak is in no position to give them concessions because these people control Sunak. And they've got many ways in which they can actually dispose of him, get him out of the post. So he's a stooge. There are stooges and there are stooges. And Sunak is the stooge. And that is one of the reasons why Anne McEvil, McAvoy, amongst others, one of Boris Johnson's main lobbyists in Fleet Street, keeps dropping under any excuse, she keeps dropping the line that Johnson is going to come back and surface as the leader of the Conservative Party and as the Prime Minister. The reason why he is reported in that way by likes of Anne McElboy is because that is the reality. If the Conservatives, the fascist ones, had learned any lesson about society and about the need for recognizing society, they would not be doing what they've been doing. They would not have done Brexit for a start. So therefore, the Conservatives or the Tories are the real obstruction to society. And that is a problem, serious problem, because there is no Labour Party in political action today. The thug Keir Starmer is a thug himself. And the criminal West Streeting is a criminal as well. So you haven't got, society doesn't have a just kind of option for fairness, due process, rule of law, justice. Most certainly not. In the Celebrity Watch column that Caitlin Moran runs on the Times, or has been running on the Times, today on page 2 of the Times, part 2, she has a piece about Suella Braverman. And she's talking about Suella Braverman as a personification of darkness, as a personification of darkness, not the only one, but she is a personification of darkness. And I'll go back to the badass Keir Starmer that she started with in a minute, but this is what she says about Caitlin Moran says about the evilness. This is about the very clear racist hatred that is represented in the display of a gollywog in a pub in Essex. Because the man who owns the pub or who actually displayed the gollywog, according to Caitlin Moran today, had a Facebook post 7 years ago. Now, that was the year of the Brexit referendum, 2016. And let's locate that particular reference by Caitlin Moran. Okay. And she says, it was made clear didn't believe the widely offensive public display of racist caricatures should be a police matter despite it potentially coming under the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998. I'm just reading part of the quotation there. Complete with the kicker of a 2016 Facebook post by the publican showing the dolls, the Gollywog dolls, had originally been displayed with an accompanying comment within quotes. They used to hang them in Mississippi years ago. What he's saying is that black people used to be hanged in Mississippi in the USA, South USA, years ago. That is what this man posted on the year of the Brexit, 2016. Now, this entry, number kind of 4 in today's Caitlin Moran Celebrity Watch Diary, is the first such piece that I have come across by any byliner on the Times that is actually talking unconditionally, objectively, and against racism. Now, if you remove the name or origin or the pigmentation from Suella Evila Cruella, then you could find what? I mean, I can't imagine Esther McVie, even Esther McVie or Nadine Dorries, any white racist woman, even a white racist woman in the Conservative Party of the last 15 years would struggle to come across as convincing as performing the duty of the office of the Home Secretary. So, what Suella Evila Cruella is doing is exceeding exceeding the limits that would be passed by any racist, self confessed racist in the UK politics. And Caitlin Moran is absolutely factually correct. To cite this 1998 Act and then continue. So let's read the whole entry, the entire entry in Caitlin Moran's diary today. Still on the topic of darkness, this week there were revelations about Suella Braverman's innovative way of establishing her ferocious anti-woke credentials without actually doing anything. In this week's Sunday Times, we learned of Braverman's intriguing response to Gollywog Gate, the sorrowful event wherein an Essex publican who has been displaying his collection of Gollywog dolls in his bar had them removed by police following a complaint. Within 24 hours, a within quotes source close within quotes to Braverman told Mail Online that the Home Secretary had rebuked Essex police for getting involved in this nonsense when they should be focusing on catching real criminals. Unquote. Braverman, it was made clear, didn't believe the wildly offensive public display of racist caricatures should be a police matter, despite it potentially coming under the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998, complete with the kicker of a 2016 Facebook post by the publican showing the dolls had originally been displayed with an accompanying comment. They used to hang them in Mississippi years ago. Unquote. So that's malicious communications and incitement to racial hatred as well. The next paragraph. Anyway, the police intervention angered Braverman so much she found them with her rebuke, within quote. Except Essex police now say they received no such phone call or communication. In other words, Braverman is telling everyone she's on a right wing, anti woke crusade, but isn't doing anything about it, which is ironic because one of the most notable traits of the left wing wokerati is also telling everyone they are on a social justice crusade, but never doing anything about it. Or, as the brilliant queer comedian Leo Risch has it, quote, a lot of the time when people ask what I do, I describe myself as an activist because I genuinely do think they are just not good, not going to, not going to check now. This is really hilarious. This is absolutely hilarious because this is something that is going on. The the American humorist writer who is now passed away had this kind of sense of humor. And I think there is no such humorist in the United Kingdom, to my knowledge, that comes anywhere near that kind of humor. And this is the first time I've come across anything that is remotely similar to that humorist whose name I shall check on. I forgot for the moment, but I'll check on his name and update this before this particular edition is finished. Now, I read this again. A lot of the time, when people ask me what I do, I describe myself as an activist because I genuinely do think they're just not going to check. Now, this actually also is the same column that actually reminds me of what the SWP wonkers, that is socialist wonkers, are getting up to. These fuckers have made themselves known as activists of the most persistent kind, appearing with mechanically produced posters at any event that is worth attending. And these criminals are themselves racists and corrupt to the core. And I think that Kathleen Moran, when she talks about the left wing wokerati, could not have put it more appropriately about the SWP wonkers. The wonkers have not stopped Brexit. In fact, the wonkers were for Brexit. So that shows the stupidity of the wonkerity. And the criminal socialist cunt, their philosopher Alex Kalinikos, the stupid idiot. The SW wonkers are rapists as well because they hushed up evidence of their women members concerned being raped by male members in the SWP. So we'll go back to Caitlin Moran and talk about this badass Keir Starmer. Good morning, sweet times reader, and welcome to the week where we were still reeling from Keir Starmer's personal attack adverse on Rishi Sunak. This would be an event that would be uncomplicatedly dolorous for the cheap, sour mood it brings to modern politics were it not for Keir Starmer personal attack advert on Rishi Sunak, conjuring up less the worst days of Trump and more the worst days of Trump and more the bit in Bridget Jones's diary where Colin Firth and Hugh Grant go into the street than have the world's most pathetic fist fight. This is ridiculous. The words Keir Starmer and personal attack just don't look right. I mean, absolutely correct, Caitlin. Well, she writes, and I'll read it again. The words Keir Starmer and personal attack just don't look right together. The vibe it magics is of Starmer in a campaign headquarters having accidentally had a caffeinated flat white instead of his usual decaffeinated and saying, I just think Rishi, a grotty man. And then a couple of startled spuds going. He's unleashed the dogs of war and pressing send on an Excel file titled Terrible Idea. Never use this. Next time you see those ads, imagine it's Raining Man playing, then Rishi is hitting Kia on the head with a bin lead, and it does start to make much more sense. Now, this is actually a summary, probably the best one so far, of Keir Starmer being completely useless, dysfunctional idiot. Now, I mentioned in that tweet earlier we did before this edition came online on air that the picture that Caitlin Moran's piece about Suella Braverman accompanies is a picture that is intentionally created, designed to show Suella Braverman possessing a curvy body. Now, Braverman's face, the one that we have been running in the tweet later, is kind of summed up by the face carried by the Daily Express when it reported the 90-minute exchange between Liz Truss and Braverman before Liz Truss sacked Braverman as Home Secretary the last time round. So, why are the Times kind of repeating this line that Suella Braverman is sexy? I mean, she is not sexy in an objective sense of the term. And even if she were to be judged sexy by some desperate individuals, that would not, that most certainly would not make up for the fact that she is a fascist. She is a fascist and she's a criminal. This is the summary of the day today is that the United Kingdom, which is supposed to be outside of the European Union, has agreed, the state that is agreed to persecute this man who is a campaigner against the French president, the moron Emmanuel Macron, who has been fascistically imposing changes to the law concerning the pension age after failing to stop the protesters on the streets of France, making ordinary life difficult in France because of the protest. So he's now got the British to harass this protester, Ernest Moret, 28-year-old executive with the left-wing publishing house Editions La Fabrique. He has refused to hand over his passcode on a point of principle which prompted his arrest. Why would the British police or the British intelligence people want to get into his phone or his laptop? What were they looking for? They held him for terrorism offenses. I mean, this is ridiculous. When I was trying to take pictures of the now replaced building opposite the Brick Lane Mosque in Brick Lane, and I've been taking pictures for decades, two uniformed Metropolitan Police stopped me in Brick Lane, the lane that I have been defending for decades. And one of them actually threatened to use the terrorism laws to harass me. Think about that. And this happened about what? I would say more than 10 years ago. In Brick Lane, next to the Brick Lane Mosque. In fact, at the corner of Fournier Street and Brick Lane. Remember Fournier Street? The financial crimes has featured these two racist morons, Gilbert and George, with their contaminated, corrupt cultural display, forgetting all about Brick Lane and the community and the people and the fights that have taken place to defend the community in Brick Lane. And I am the defender of Brick Lane. And these police threatening me with harassment under the terrorism law. Now, how could taking pictures of a building which is soon to be replaced, how could that be construed as an offense? And as a constitutional law campaigner for more than 60 years, I mean, I never do things knowingly that would give the excuse to the state to remotely cite an illegality against me. That's the whole point. That is the strength of the morality and the ethics and the legality and objectivity. So this man, Ernest Moray, that's my pronunciation hearing from the French kind of experts. I mean, he has been arrested under the contrary to Section 18 of the Terrorism Act 2000. And it said that it had been arrested on suspicion of willfully obstructing a Schedule 7 examination, contrary to Section 18 of the Terrorism Act 2000. A man who is the licensed law trader for Ernest Moray, working at the business called Saunders Solicitors, attended the questioning of Moray by the police, and he said it has got all the appearance of him being stopped on behalf of the French authorities. Perry said there is no suggestion that he was coming here, that is to London, to anything illegal or he had ever committed any crime on British territory. The biggest question is this us, that is Britain, doing the business of the French state? Because they don't have the powers to do it in France. That would be a scandalous abuse of the Terrorism Act. Now, let's talk about the scandal and the abuse. There is no legal action at any level in the United Kingdom being conducted by any lawyer, any licensed law trader, anywhere, to challenge the abuses of powers by the UK state, let alone the abuse of the terror law. There is no campaign whatsoever. And parallel to that, there is no campaign ongoing or a campaign that has ever gone on since the nominal campaign that was run in support of Aubrey, Berry, and Campbell. That was about the Official Secrets Act in the 1970s. And so in the United Kingdom, there is no legal action going on by the known journalists organization, the NUJ, or by the likes of the Good Law Project, which was making waves during the Brexit campaign. And there is no evidence anywhere of the United Kingdom Parliament hearing any representation by any member of Parliament in defense of civil liberties, in defense of objective expression of the freedom to oppose injustice or oppose unjust legislation. So when Dominic Raab is kind of in the news about his being bullied, he's being an aggressive individual, notice the difference? He's not in the news as the occupant, as he was until a few hours ago today, of the post of cabinet minister in the department supposed to be called the Ministry of Justice. And at every level of the judiciary, in the United Kingdom, There is injustice, number one, and number two, there is obstruction. And number three, there is an almost permanent denial of access to the process of law in this country. The process of law, which reminds me to refer again to Imran Khan in Pakistan, who praised during the rallies that have stopped being held in Pakistan anymore. Imran Khan attended about a few dozen rallies across Pakistan shortly after he was ousted by the combined conspiracies, etc., of imported hukumat at the promptings of the Americans and others. Imran Khan made positive references to the United Kingdom's judicial system, and he repeatedly said that in the United Kingdom there was the rule of law. And Imran Khan was actually referring in context, is referring to the way that Boris Johnson had been ousted or had been exposed. And Imran Khan gave credit for that outcome to what he claimed to be the operation, the presence, the availability in the United Kingdom of rule of law. Now, I have campaigned and I have been campaigning for rule of law and due process for decades. Since before Imran Khan left primary school. And most of my time in campaigning for the due process, fact, has been spent 50 years plus in the UK. As I said, I rejected the opportunity to become a barrister in 1973. And the reason why I said no in 1973 was to do with the fact that the Lincoln's Inn bureaucracy was fronted by a racist, dishonest woman. Now, she could not stop me, but the fact that she was there was a factor. Just like a few years later, I refused to take a job in the British civil service. Not because I had done anything wrong, but a wrong question was asked of me by the civil service person recruiting, who did the interview and asked me a stupid question. And on the point of principle, I refused to answer. It wasn't that anything that I would say would neutralize my independence or my integrity, but the audacity on the part of this individual asking me a question told me that I should not be a member of the civil service. Because if that is the kind of question that they asked about my personal freedom, then I didn't want to have any job. So, those who don't understand the history, my history is like this on principle. I am the only journalist in the whole world that has worked for otherwise, quote, professional journals and outlets. And I have not received a single penny in either as a salary or remuneration, whatever. And the reason for that is simple. Because if I received the salary, then I would be bound by the requirements, the conditions of the employers. And the conditions of the employers, both employers that I worked for the publications or I wrote in the publications that they owned, was that I could not have independent opinion. Now, independent opinion based on the facts is the most important thing for me in journalism, in writing and reporting, in observing. The other day I mentioned the rally held in 1970 in the race course in Dhaka next to the Institute of Engineers. That was before March. Because the events took a different course in March. So there was no more rallies. So this rally happened between January and let's say end of February. And I wrote most of the coverage for the daily newspaper for the following day. And my writing in Bangla attracted the most attention. And one of those individuals who read the articles took the trouble of visiting the office of the newspaper. And I was present on the premises. And the editor of the newspaper called me from the newsroom. And when I went to the editor's office, this individual was there. And the editor introduced me briefly because the editor knew not to be stupid in talking to me. So he was very limited and he said, he used my nickname, the family name, and he said, here is this leader. The name was Shafiqul Islam, AQM Shafiqul Islam. He is here about this, the editor said. So I asked this man to explain himself. And he said that he had a complaint against the piece that I had written. And I said, what is that? He said that I had left him out because he was a leading speaker at the rally at the race course. And I left him out. Remember, I am a Siloti speaker. I write and speak Bengali even when I want to. But while I was in Dhaka, most of my conversations were in English. And I spoke to this individual and I said, well, I wrote the piece, you didn't. And I wrote the piece as I saw the events. You can't tell me what to write. And then I don't remember what else I said afterwards. And I said words to the effect that I told him to bugger off. That is the amount of independence that I think I deserve. So that was 53 years ago. And he was AQM Shafiqul Islam. He was reportedly an uncle of a man called Ghulam Azam, who was the leader of the East Pakistan Jamaat Islami. And somebody, while I was in the newsroom another time, somebody phoned the newsroom and I answered the newsroom incoming call and I said, what was the call about. And this call, I wanted to know something about Ghulam Azam. Now, I don't remember exactly what I said, of course, but effectively I told him to fuck off. I said this newsroom was nothing to do with any politician, be it Ghulam Azam or whatever. Now, essentially, the people that are now called Bangladeshis and were in 1970 called East Pakistanis have been let down by the politicians, the likes of AQM Shafiqul Islam. Now, AQM Shafiqul Islam was also friends with a top civil servant in Pakistan at the time. The top civil servant meaning I think it was Shafiul Azam, who was the top civil servant working for the regime of Ayub Khan. Now, I knew all of these facts, and I was never impressed by these people's connections. And I wanted to see what, if any, these politicians were doing for the people, for the country, for democracy. There was nothing that they were doing for democracy. These are like the KQM. I gave him the name KQM. AQM Shafiqul Islam. I changed the name. I called him KQM Shafiqul Islam, the moron. And these people boasted, boasted of being Muslim politicos. Now, my understanding of Islam showed a different standard of behavior, a different standard of behavior and ethics and delivery. None of these people delivered any of it, which takes me back to the 1950s, mid 1950s, when the late Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani was leading the United Front, that is the Jukto Front, against the election kind of rivals, the Muslim League. The Muslim League had the electoral some kind of symbol, the lantern, and the United Front had the symbol of the boat. Despite the fact that they were called the Muslim League and they were the ones that had campaigned in the 1940s for the referendum to go for Muslim dominated areas to join the proposed Pakistan. So they had a solid background in terms of fact about the role they had played in the referendum in the 1940s. So how was it that they quickly, in less than 10 years of the referendum, the Muslim League lost all credibility? And the answer is that they were not. They were not led in accordance with the manifesto of Islam. They were not telling the truth, and they were not showing recognition to democracy, and they were not showing respect to the people. They're taking the people for granted, etc., etc. And they had nothing to promise the people for the future, which is the reason why the United Front, led by the late Maulana Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani, was receiving greater support from the population. I was just joining the political campaigning. I wasn't joining the party or parties. I was just joining the political movement in the 1950s. And the reason I supported the United Front was because they were promising democracy, accountability, and answerability under the leadership of the late Maulana Abdul Hamid Khan Bashani. He's late now, he died in 1976. But in 1950s, he was very much alive. He died 20 years later. Now, the absurdity in the presentation of the Hakiki Azadi promise being made by Imran Khan in Pakistan is that Imran Khan is not showing due recognition to the concept of Pakistan, to the duties owed to the people of Pakistan based on the promises made in the 1940s for the people of Pakistan. Imran Khan's promise for Hakiki Azadi, so far as I can see it, is most delivered in the emotional attachment and excitement that he has been creating about that. That is doomed to fail because since 1947, 76 years now, successive incumbents in various posts in the state of Pakistan have lied to the people of Pakistan about Islam. Not lied about some kind of vague things. They have not delivered. And the lying by the Pakistani post holders for 76 years has to be judged, measured, reviewed, investigated, and examined by applying the criteria of Islam. That is something that Imran Khan is failing to do as well. He can mention Islam, he can mention the Prophet, he can mention Muhammad Iqbal, he can mention Muhammad Ali Jinnah, but mentioning those and mentioning the big slogan, Hakiki Azadi, is not the same as delivering. For example, this woman who was a celebrated Pakistani national champion, hockey champion, she is one of the people who drowned in the boat that sank off the coast of Italy. I mean, I haven't seen anything. I have not seen or heard or read anything about this woman, the national heroine from Imran Khan or his party. How come? Especially as Imran Khan is the most well known Pakistani national kind of sports personality. How is it that he has ignored this woman's life and plight and has failed to draw lessons? I mean, the general myth, the general kind of ordinary racist myths about what a refugee is would leave her out. The refugees are anonymous people without any accomplishment, without anything to do with their name or anything. Now, here is a very tall personality, one of the most celebrated sportswomen of Pakistan. What a disgrace How is it that somebody like her wasn't provided for sufficiently by the Pakistan government so that she did not have to risk her life in search for material support that would sustain her and her child, a disabled child she left behind? The manifesto that Imran Khan has hinted at by combining Muhammad Iqbal, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, and the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, a manifesto that should be capable of delivering the highest standards of social service, social protection, social recognition for all the people within the boundary, within the borders of the country. And Imran Khan, to my understanding of his rallies and his speeches, has stopped way short of doing that. Now, I'm not making a personal criticism of Imran Khan as I am making overdue criticism of the absence of a program in Pakistan for the people of Pakistan. Imran Khan has attempted, but it seems that he is not cared enough to provide the materials, provide the goods, provide the articulation of the program for the country. I shall, of course, return to Imran Khan and Pakistan in due course. Back to what is happening this afternoon in the United Kingdom. Because the Daily Eye newspaper of Friday, the 21st of April 2023, had the front page, Deputy PM Raab refuses to resign. And the 4 lines of subheading, Sunak deciding whether to sack Dominic Raab after reading report into 8 bullying allegations. Secondly, Raab believes official inquiry shows he has not breached ministerial code, so won't offer to quit. And the third one is the Prime Minister and his deputy hold talks about his future. And the fourth and the last one is the civil servants who accuse Raab of abusive conduct, angry at delay and anxious he may continue in post. Now, that of course, all of that has changed. And as I was saying at the beginning, the reason why it has all changed is because, quite apart from the fascist members of the Conservative Party in Parliament, there are other factors at work that are affecting the behavior of the government fronted by Rishi Sunak. The activities that Sunak is involved in as Prime Minister, of course, include the relationship with the United States, the relationship with the member states of the European Union, including, of course, France, as is starkly exposed in the arrest and harassment of Ernest Morin under the Terrorism Act. And it all shows that far from Brexit having been done, Brexit has undone Brexit has undone the UK's relationships. And a lot of that undoing has been produced by people like Dominic Raab. And Raab was not seen as a potential helper to the cause of restoring the credibility of the Conservative Party to a point where the Conservative Party could confidently expect to do well at the next general election, whenever that is held. So let's go back to the actual updates and see what the updates are saying about Dominic Raab at this hour, which is 14:37 GMT. Let's see what they're saying. So 20 minutes ago, the Independent was running. Well, it's now 4 minutes ago. So it's like 14:34 hours GMT. Dominic Raab resigns. Oliver Dowden named Deputy PM after damning bullying report. And the Financial Times says UK politics and business. Dowden named Deputy Prime Minister. EY, John Lewis and BMW quit CBI. Now, CBI, we shall come to the CBI shortly. Now, the Independent, about 8 minutes ago, the Independent said Raab acted in intimidating fashion with persistently aggressive conduct, report finds. Now, this is what the Independent version is saying. It's saying that Dominic Raab has resigned after an official investigation into claims he bullied civil servants, found he acted in an intimidating fashion and displayed persistently aggressive conduct. Now, that is the behavior of a thug, which is how we described him. In one case, the former Deputy Prime Minister made what could have been understood as a threat, which had a significant adverse effect on the person affected, an independent probe found. Mr. Raab said that he stood by his word to resign if he was found guilty of bullying. But in an extraordinary move, he also took aim at the inquiry, claiming he had been subjected to a Kafkaesque saga for which the British people would pay the price. The investigation's findings were flawed, and it had created a dangerous precedent by setting the threshold for bullying so low, he added. Mr. Sunak also faced a backlash from Tory MPs who branded the Prime Minister weak and disloyal and said Britain was no longer a serious country. Number 10 sources said the Prime Minister did not tell his deputy to resign, despite criticism overnight, including from his own ministers, that he was dithering over his deputy's fate. Downing Street also insisted the Prime Minister had no regrets about not acting more swiftly. The two men spoke on Friday morning, number 10 confirmed. But in the end, Mr. Rab had published a punchy resignation letter and an opinion piece in the Daily Telegraph setting out his version of events before number 10 released the findings of the official report. Labour leader Keir Starmer accused Mr. Sunak of indecision and weakness. Why didn't he sack him? He asked. The report found Mr. Rab acted in a way which was intimidating in the sense of unreasonably and persistently aggressive conduct in the context of a work meeting. In one instance, his conduct was seen as undermining or humiliating by the complainant. It is to be inferred that the Deputy Prime Minister was aware that this would be the effect of his conduct. At the very least, he should have been aware, the report found. In another case, the report found Mr. Raab made what could have been understood as a threat toward a civil servant which had a significant adverse effect on the person affected. On a number of occasions at meetings with policy officials, the Deputy Prime Minister acted in a manner which was intimidating, it said. Earlier in his resignation letter, Mr. Raab, who has denied allegations of bullying, said he felt duty bound to accept the outcome of the inquiry. But he came out fighting, even as he stood down, warning the independent investigation had set a playbook for a small number of officials to target ministers. Writing in the Telegraph, Mr. Raab also claimed that a senior civil servant had ordered staff out of his office, claiming they had Stockholm syndrome, an accusation he denied. Now, Stockholm syndrome means that people who are kept hostage assume the line of the hostage taker. In a letter to his former deputy, Mr. Sunak accepted Mr. Raab's resignation but highlighted shortcomings in the investigation which have negatively affected everyone involved. Whitehall is to consider how to improve the process by which some complaints are made, number 10 said. The Prime Minister did not criticize Mr. Raab and thanked him for his record of delivery in government, including deputizing for former Prime Minister Boris Johnson when he was hospitalized with COVID. I will always be grateful for your steadfast personal support during last year's Conservative Party leadership contest, Mr. Sunak said. The subsequent dedication, commitment, and loyalty with which you have discharged your responsibilities as Deputy Prime Minister has been typical of your belief in public service in he added. In a decision opposed by Mr. Raab, Mr. Sunak chose to adopt a definition of bullying which did not rely on the Deputy Prime Minister having been aware of or intended to be offensive, intimidating, malicious, or insulting. The findings of Adam Tolley, KSC, that is King's Counsel, independent probe landed on the Prime Minister's desk on Thursday. But the results are not published, but initially revealed. The Prime Minister also faced an almost immediate backlash from his own backbenchers over Mr. Raab's disputed departure. One Tory MP tweeted in response to Mr. Raab's letter, "We are not a serious country." And in a pointed dig aimed at Mr. Sunak, former Culture Secretary Nadine Dorries said, "The least desirable qualities in any politician are disloyalty, weakness, self preservation, and a lack of principle." Now, this is exactly what Sunak is guilty of. So, continuing to quote Raab, systematic leaking of skewed and fabricated claims to the media in breach of the rules of the inquiry and the Civil Service Code of Conduct, and the coercive removal by a senior official of dedicated private secretaries from my Ministry of Justice private office in October of last year. I hope these will be independently reviewed, he wrote. In a staunch defense of his actions, he said, ministers had to be able to exercise direct oversight with respect to senior officials over critical negotiations conducted on behalf of the British public or British people. Otherwise, the democratic and constitutional principle of ministerial responsibility will be lost. This was particularly true during his time as Foreign Secretary, he said, when, in the context of the Brexit negotiations over Gibraltar, a senior diplomat breached the mandate agreed by the cabinet. He added, second, ministers must be able to give direct critical feedback on briefings and submissions to senior officials in order to set the standards and drive the reform of the public expect of us. Of course, this must be done within reasonable bounds. Now, the criminality of this whole pathetic peddling by the Independent of this thug is that there is no reference to the public, the electors, society, the truth, and the people being denied access to due process remedies through the court systems. Going back to the courts, there was a woman who has retired. Well, two racist women judges have retired, whom I shall name. One is a solicitor called Judith Goodman, and the other is Henrietta Manners. These two criminals were in post in the Shoreditch, well, Clerkenwell and Shoreditch County Court. Now, because of the length it will take to describe their criminality and racism, I shall postpone this discussion until or delay it until another time. Now, this particular edition has to be concluded because of the length it is taking itself. Now, this is now 1 hour, 33 minutes, and ending at 14:50 GMT on Friday, the 21st of April 2023.